please welcome Head of Events at Redgate Software, Annabelle Bradford.
Good morning. You're all very welcome here at Past Data Community Summit. It's so great to see you all. This is our largest in-person gathering to date. And I'm so happy to welcome so many data professionals from a range of different backgrounds. And as you heard yesterday in Steve Jones's keynote intro, it's really important to us that Past Summit is an inclusive, welcoming, and enjoyable event for everyone. So I want to give a few shout-outs here. And as you heard yesterday as well, we have 45% of first-timers. And that is an incredible amount. So welcome to you all. And welcome back to our alumni. And let's also hear it for the folks tuning in online too. So this is my 14th Past Summit. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Annabelle, and I'm Head of Events at Redgate. And it's always been such a pleasure for me to come here to Past Summit. And I've always typically been on the Redgate booth. So you can see here some of my fondest memories over the years, and I get to meet so many incredible people, all of you in the data community. It's just amazing. There's no doubt that the data community and the sponsor ecosystem are what makes Past Summit so special. And I hope you feel the same, or you will do by the end of the week. So I'm so proud of the team that are leading the event. And if you see us around the venue, please do give all of my team your appreciation, because they've worked so hard. And since we took over the running the event in 2021, we've just always continued to stay true to our goals of providing you with an incredible experience to support your learning and your professional growth. So I hope you'll also agree that this new building certainly does give your mind the space, and you can just network everywhere. It's really incredible. So let's talk about yesterday. There were nearly 100 sessions and countless networking in the exhibit hall and 50 community expert clinic meetings. There was such a buzz in the community zone, and the exhibit hall yesterday evening, hopefully many of you were there, was really, really great. So much going on. What an amazing day. So whatever yesterday had in store for you, today is a new day, and you have the power to achieve anything and everything. So whether you've set yourself a goal to investigate the latest advancements in the technology that you use daily, or you're looking to grow your network, or simply you just need some help with a real-world challenge, just take everything in your stride this week and soak up everything there is available. There are another 79 sessions happening today. If you haven't already downloaded that event app, please do so. That will just help you know where you're going and when. You can also make sure you check out the Expo Expedition that's in the exhibit hall. They'll be doing some prize drawing later today, so if you haven't had a chance to go around the booths, please make sure you check those out. And then we've got the community zone and the expert clinics. Again, if you haven't made a booking and you want to get some advice from some of the experts that are here, do check that out. The Women in Technology Luncheon takes place in Ballroom 2 and 3 over lunch with Jez Chapman. So that's going to be really exciting. There's so much going on. So your experience is really, really important to us. So we use everything that we get from you to help craft future event experiences. And so please do take an opportunity to fill out your session evaluations and also share on the event hashtag, because that's really going to help us. My hope is that this year's Past Summit becomes the most memorable conference you've experienced all year, if not of all time. And something to bear in mind while you're here this week is that while we're all so very different, we do all share a common interest, and that's that we're here to connect, share, and learn together. So as proud hosts of Past Summit, we're delighted to have you all here this morning to share insights and experiences from across the data landscape. And today's keynote has an incredible lineup of speakers for you to get to know. We've got data industry specialists from IDC, APG, and Redgate. And it's my absolute pleasure to be handing over to the Redgate team to present the keynote, Simplifying Complexity, Making the Database Work in the Real World. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Redgate's newest advocate and engineer, Kellen Gorman.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you are all awake. Everybody had breakfast. My name is Kellen Gorman. If you have not heard of me, I am the strange Oracle girl that y'all adopted. I kid you not. I am here doing even Postgres sessions, so here's our world. I have been in this community for over 25 years, in the Microsoft community since 2012, when I went to a SQL Saturday event and fell in love with it. I loved your energy. I loved everything that you were bringing into the community, and I just decided to stick around. Ended up doing a lot of Oracle and Azure, became their Oracle SME at Microsoft, as well as my time that I spent at Oracle building out a lot of the performance metric tools. But now I'm here. I have joined Grant Fritchie, Steve Jones, and Ryan Booz as the newest advocate to help you on your next step in your tech journey. So I know that these numbers that you're seeing here are a little scary. I myself have felt this pain of all of these tech breaches, these data breaches that are occurring within our industry, and we feel it. It resonates with us because we are the ones that are often on the front lines. We're the ones that are there in the trenches, expected to not just protect our own data, but everyone else's as well. This is even made more painful as we become multi-platform. Even though in the State of the Database Landscape Survey, it came back in 2024 that 26% of you were single platform, the truth is that 74% of you, you've joined Team Kellen. You are multi-platform. Another 26% came back and said, considering that you're going to be just single platform isn't realistic. It just isn't happening anymore with the introduction of the cloud, AI, as well as vendor applications, and doing more with less. These numbers come along with the organizations where 21% of them were very concerned about security. At the same time, 69% of them were starting to adopt AI and ML to start adding into all of that complexity that you yourselves are part of the solution that has to be built out around it. 61% have those concerns about privacy with AI, but then we are trying to figure out how we're going to navigate that. To produce the data that is included for part of these testing, dev, as well as just our production support, many customers were not bringing in synthetic data as part of that solution. 14% didn't even have plans to address it. 71% of these organizations were doing manual data, synthetic data, to actually bring those into those systems, and that's a really tedious process. Many DBAs spend up to 60% of their time producing this data and getting it to developers. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so you may say, how can we be part of a more or a better solution? It really does take a village. You need to find your people. You need to build your team. Doing this means that we build out our own tools, we actually build out our processes, we find the right folks, and we make sure that we're only as good as our weakest link. We make sure that none of us end up that guy down there in the bottom left that's sideways in the road and about to run over the cyclist, because we all know that developer. We don't want to be that developer. I love AI images, by the way. And so we start to also bring in machine learning. It becomes our partner. It's not here to replace us. It's actually here to be our co-pilot. Yes, I said co-pilot. I know you've been hearing a lot of it. But this is a great part of AI, machine learning, that we can start to automate more, do more with less, and be more because of it. We also adapt. This is one of the things I loved, again, about the Microsoft community. With the older tech communities that I was a part of, many of them would dig in deep and learn what they knew, but they couldn't adapt and pivot and be more. I found with the Microsoft community, no matter how much you specialize, no matter how deep you went, you were also willing to step back, go wide, learn new, build with tools that were available to you, and adapt. And adapting will be extremely important. But don't just take it from me. We're going to bring out some people to start talking about this, and one of them is the CTO for Redgate. I'd like to introduce you to Graham McMillan.
Hi, I'm Graham McMillan, Chief Technology Officer of Redgate, and it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. This is my first PaaS Data Community Summit, like so many of you. But this time last year, I was in an in-house engineering leadership role, leading 200 engineers working on a whole range of systems, some of which were over 20 years old. And it's those systems, which I think you'll recognize, those are the ones that take up so much of our time. Systems that have grown and evolved in response to business pressures, but without the time and space to update them, to evolve the technology. They're earning money, delighting customers, getting a return on their investment, and that's the driving force, whereas technical upgrades and paying down technical debt take a back seat. One of those systems I had ended up having 30,000 SQL Server instances, running a SaaS application across 2 data centers. It got upgraded every 12 or 14 months, and those changes were brittle and resulted in performance issues. And quite frankly, some of our customers weren't getting the service that they deserved. So I've been in your shoes, and I appreciate how difficult it can be to make the case for change, investing in people, processes, and technology to make things better. I've been on that journey of improved testing, automating the testing, monthly releases, paying down some of that complexity, migrating to the cloud, while continuing to grow the business, and quite frankly, not burning out our DBAs. And it's not all about responding to fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which Kellen referred to a little bit about earlier. I'd like to make the case for optimism. I believe that we can be more efficient by also creating time and space to be innovative while still being secure. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my co-host for this section, Senior Research Director at IDC, Archana Venkatraman, to the stage.
Great to see you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be here. And like Graham, I'm also a first-timer. As you can tell, I missed the dress code. So next year, I'm going to be here in my jeans and sneakers to meet you all. I'm going to be sharing some IDC research insights on the challenges that organizations are facing, exactly like you, and some of the best practices along the way.
Thanks, Archana. So in my experience, that technology change, the process change, tends to be driven by the engineering organization. But I think we're starting to see that the boardroom is increasingly interested in what's happening in engineering. What is driving that change?
Yeah, that's right. So business is taking a keen interest in technology investments, and digital ambitions are soaring, and there is some real investment and KPIs attached to it. As you can see from the first start, the growth in digital technology spend is outpacing the growth in global economy by 7x. So there's some real investment going into this. And organizations are expecting this to translate into at least half of their business revenues to come from digital products and services. So they're all aiming to become software producers. And that is having a tectonic shift into their technology building blocks. So we are seeing a lot more cloud-native applications that interact with microservices architecture, modern databases, and completely new processes.
Great, understood. That makes sense. So now we've got the attention of the boardroom, and that's got a double-edged sword. What are they expecting from us?
Yeah, so that digital ambition is translating into what organizations are doing from accelerated software development and delivery. So the first one is embracing those CI/CD strategies. And then there are 4 strategic priorities that all organizations are aiming to get better at. And that's speed, quality, efficiency, and productivity. Maybe we've seen these before, right? But think about achieving these strategic priorities when the regulatory complexities are increasing and the budgets are shrinking and there are sophisticated security risks. And as you can see, there are less than half of organizations that are actually able to deliver on these 4 strategic mandates. So especially if you look at that productivity, it's just 28% of organizations that are able to meet what they initially set out to. Does this surprise you, Graham?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I've been experienced this all my career, so absolutely makes sense. And I think that show back is really important. These metrics are critical to us showing progress and remind our boardroom colleagues of the importance of seeing this through. Attention drifts, and these are multi-year efforts. So falling back into acting tactically can be a real problem.
And that's actually bringing in a lot of organizations into a lot of new pain points. And we've identified 3 key pain points. They're somehow interlinked to each other, but I would just like to deliberate on those because these are significant challenges that needs to be addressed. The first one is excessive technical debt. And we have heard a lot of organizations accumulate tremendous technical debt over the course of pandemic when they've had to pivot quickly to a new normal and embrace newer technologies. So that helped them, or that made them accumulate a lot of excessive technical debt. And it is actually beginning to bite, where organizations are investing a lot more either by throwing in more resources at it or just taking a tactical approach to addressing it because they're moving from quarter to quarter in terms of business decisions. But we saw some organizations that are getting it right, the 48% that are able to get that speed, efficiency, productivity, and quality are the ones that are setting aside some buffer time or some buffer resources to chip away at that technical debt, because unless you address it root and branch, it's going to be very difficult to get there. And you are very passionate about technical debt, aren't you?
Yeah, we hear about technical debt a lot. A lot of our customers are coming to us saying, can you help pay that down? And I don't really like the word technical debt. I think what we're doing is applying today's wisdom on yesterday's decisions. And that hindsight is cruel because we made those decisions in the context that we were in. The pressure to deliver fast meant we did make tactical decisions. And I think we all need to recognize and be proud of those decisions and make the case for change.
That is so right. Those decisions looked good at that point in time, and hindsight is a great gift. And I think the next big challenge I want to highlight is very much this database challenge. And in our research, time and time again, database development and change is cited as the single biggest bottleneck in accelerated software development and delivery. And if you look at it, it's taking DBAs 3.5 hours on average to deploy databases. And this is what our research across 1,100 organizations found. And when you delve a little bit deeper or go under the hood and look at why this is happening, you see that the DBA world is operating in a silo from the rest of the DevOps world. So you have a lot of siloed development happening, and the teams are not talking to each other, so they don't understand each other's pain. And the next big challenge is the DBA environment is still very manual, so very few organizations, the digitally matured ones, have that completely automated. And when you automate, you can improve the speed and align to the developers' existing tool sets and match their requirement for speed and quality. And the other big reason is very much the regulatory complexities. If you think about the DBAs, they have to make sure that they are building the right guardrails and they're focused on compliance, which is very important for an organization to mitigate the risks. And as they deal with multitude of newer databases in this cloud-native world, it becomes a big challenge, and that's why it's slowing them down, and something needs to change.
Yeah. And we hear about technical debt. The database has become a bottleneck. You know, people talk about blue-green deployments, but really they're talking about the application layer. Making blue-green deployments in the database is super hard. Unless you architect and plan for it, it's very difficult, because once you've got new rows and new columns in the database, rolling that back is super hard. So absolutely understand that the speed is a bottleneck.
Yeah, and that culminates into productivity challenge, where organizations are spending less time on strategic tasks like new code development and application functionality, and spending a lot of time fighting fires. So it becomes a very big challenge.
So organizations are solving these problems tactically. We're creating new applications to get around the problem because the old ones are so hard to change. And it just shows why it's important to do these things in a concerted way. Otherwise, you get into this environments, context switching is super hard. So what is the impact of solving these things tactically?
Yeah, so all these decisions have resulted in organizations ending up in what we call a messy middle. So 8 in 10 organizations are stuck in this messy middle. There's some kind of a digital impasse where they've made changes, they've addressed the low-hanging fruits, but then got stuck after that. So this is just an infrastructure picture on the left-hand side where you can see organizations have different types of cloud environments, platform environments, on-premises legacy environments, and these infrastructure come loaded with capabilities and platform services and data services. So it's extremely complex to navigate through that, and that's resulting in a lot of operational and governance challenges. So our research highlights 6 key operational and governance challenges that's holding organizations back. I'd just like to pick maybe a couple, maybe 3 of those. Security and compliance, always a big issue and becoming a lot more of an issue as complexity increases. But then cost control, I mean, that is something that the board cares about. So you now have the CFO's attention to make sure that you are making sure that everything is optimized and working properly, so that cost control, we live in a value decade, right? Value for or return for investment is extremely important. So there's huge amount of scrutiny on cost, and that needs to get fixed. And the last one I want to highlight very much is this idea of visibility. Look, if you don't know what's there, you can't manage what you can't see. So visibility needs to be shifted to become like that initial baseline where organizations can see what is happening, and you can't argue with data. Data is data. So then the teams come together and identify the exact root cause and address it.
Got it. And like I alluded to earlier, organizations can get into this situation because they're making tactical decisions, or the change management effort hasn't quite seen all the way through. So it's hard to sustain that over time horizon that we expect these changes to have an effect. So what are the best practices that you're seeing in the industry about how to get out of this messy middle?
Yeah. I wish I had an easy answer, but I think it always starts with culture, no pain, no gain. There has to be a strong intent, a top-down intent for organizations to break down those silos. That's pretty much the starting point. Sounds easy, but it's difficult, which is why I said use that visibility as the baseline to bring the teams together. And it's funny, Graham, I was talking to a lot of organizations, and what the trend that we are beginning to see at IDC is that about 70% of their total full-time employees are in some shape or form connected to software application development and delivery, and it's just 2% of that are the DBAs. So there is a huge mismatch. So there's huge amount of pressure and requests coming in from the DevOps community into a smaller DBA community.
Wow, so that's a 1:35 ratio.
Yeah.
So we've got like 1,000 DBAs here. That means there's 35,000 developers waiting for you to get back next week and make some releases.
When you put it like that.
So we need a common vision before we really start working together. The old saw about culture eats strategy for breakfast is really true.
That's right, yeah. So when they come together, they have a common shared vision, and that's very much the starting point. And you get that common shared vision when you have visibility into your environment.
Okay.
And then moving forward, once you have that top-down culture intent of collaboration, then you identify where you're lacking in terms of your technology capabilities, because the idea is to empower the DBAs, cater to that big C of developer team. So we looked at the data desires of organizations, and we've identified 6 core data desires. Now, if you look at them, you can broadly categorize them into 2 buckets of resilience, which include security, governance, integrity, and innovation, like data mobility, access, availability. So it's really balancing that resilience and innovation is one of the biggest challenges, and taking a platform approach where where the DBAs have all the tools to develop those guardrails and then give the developer community the self-service experience that they like is the way forward. So having a top-down technology culture of breaking down the silos, overcoming manual challenges, and taking a platform approach is the way forward.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, thanks, Archana, for all those amazing insights. We really appreciate having you here today. Thank you, Archana Venkatraman.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Archana. So that's a great link to our next presentation, where we're going to hear about how to build such a DevOps platform. So I'm delighted to welcome Arne Eskandari, Director of Solutions Engineering at Redgate, and Danny Dahan, Product Architect at APG Group, to the stage. And they're going to bring you through some of these.
Thanks, Graham and Archana. I'm very excited to be here today with Danny Dahan to put some real faces and stories to the challenges and statistics that Kellen, Graham, and Archana have spoken about so far. But first, I'd like to introduce our guest. Danny is a SQL Server infrastructure specialist and product architect for on-prem database management systems at APG. Welcome, Danny. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we dive in, can you tell us a little more about what APG does?
Of course. APG, the old pensions group, is the largest pension provider in the Netherlands. We work for 8 different pension funds, including some of the largest in the country. 4.6 current and future pensioners rely on us to deliver what they worked for all those years. And with around 4,500 people across the world, we are working really hard on a new pension system that is being introduced in the Netherlands at the start of 2025. For APG, pension is about people, about life and living together, and we want to make a difference so that we, our parents, our children, have a proper pension and income now, tomorrow, and in the future. And we want to provide a good pension, but also want to contribute to society through various initiatives. But always with a sustainable future as a core value. Now, the people you see here on this screen are just a selection of the people that we work for. From police officers to military personnel to construction workers, teachers, medical specialists, architects, cleaners, and even our own employees.
Thanks, Danny. What a great mission. This is a perfect example of how the data we manage in our organizations plays a crucial role in serving the needs of the world on a daily basis. Now, we've been talking a lot about how the landscape for DevOps and infrastructure has evolved. And I remember hearing that 5 years ago, APG's approach was quite different. Can you take us back to that time and tell us how things were structured?
Yeah. 5, 6 years ago was a time that a lot of things were done in a manual fashion or through very simple automation. APG is split into various business units, and within those business units, teams had to request every single component in their infrastructure by themselves in different places with different teams, before they could even start working on their own application. So they had to have standing, high privilege access on a lot of those components, whether we're talking databases, instances, or even underlying infrastructure like a Windows Server SQL is running on. So that was not sustainable when looking at things like identity management, privilege access management, PII-related data being accessible for way too many people. And especially with like GDPR around the corner, things just had to change.
That makes perfect sense. And it's clear why that setup wasn't sustainable. You mentioned manual processes, siloed teams, unreliable access management, and bottlenecks in your team trying to serve the needs of your internal customers. Challenges that I'm sure are very familiar to most folks here in the room today. Now, fast forward to today, and you've moved to a more automated infrastructure as code model. Tell us about that shift.
When focusing on my team as an example, we started building on advancing the automation of our own database infrastructure deployments, ensuring that infra as code was one of those key components. And installation of SQL Server is one, but as a financial company, we have to adhere to a lot of legislation and compliance-related baselines. So configuration and staying in line with those baselines post-deployment was a key factor as well. We've built our own management platform incorporating a lot of self-built components, of which you can see an example at the bottom right here. And no, it's not your eyes. It is indeed a blurred screenshot. We created even a logo just to have fun with it. But we also included third-party tools, which was to achieve that single pane of glass. Now, this is all accessible to DBAs within those business units working for us. And we are currently in the process of, let's say, an evolution, maybe a revolution, depending on your view of it. Within our newest DevOps Ready Data Center philosophy, DevOps teams have a blueprint of all the infrastructure components that they need, including an application system or environment-specific configuration. Now, they can either use the configuration in a portal or use the blueprint, including the configuration in an API, which will then provision their infrastructure. So they can request SQL databases, any other centralized managed DBMS, application servers, certain cloud services, web or file services, they are all accessible to them through this way of deployment. Now, in the end, it ensures them ease of use, independence, as they can do it all by themselves. They can work more efficient, but they are compliant by design because of all the legislation we have to adhere to. And the good thing is, they are secure by design, which is ensured through the infrastructure provisioning process.
That sounds very interesting. I really appreciate how your team has taken a forward-thinking approach to database infrastructure automation, especially in a highly regulated environment like finance. From my experience, there is often a misconception, especially within ops teams, that increased automation means sacrificing control. But as you've shown, automation doesn't mean sidestepping regulations. Rather, it ensures compliance by design. And I think the balance that you've struck, enabling ease of use and independence while ensuring security and compliance, truly exemplifies the benefits that thoughtful automation can bring to our organizations. Thanks again for shedding light on your approach. Now, looking ahead, it seems like security and compliance are going to play an even bigger role. Can you talk about that and what the future holds for APG's infrastructure?
We can. So with compliance and legislation becoming increasingly intertwined with infrastructure and applications, it's becoming more and more difficult for DevOps teams to focus on all of the aspects that are required, basically. So with a potential burden on them, as Achana previously pointed out. So what we're trying to remove is that responsibility for infrastructure as much as we can, by providing them with a secure and compliant platform straight from deployment onwards. Now, ensuring that potential changes that they make that are not compliant with that baseline are flagged as soon as possible. So when looking at the database side of things, and especially data in itself, we want to ensure that those provisioned databases are secure and compliant as well, and that the data becomes part of the deployment process that I showed you earlier in the form of configuration. And that's where our focus is currently on for the future.
Perfect. That's a great approach, and this all sounds fantastic, but I'm sure there are many organizations who are struggling to simplify their infrastructure. So what advice would you have for them?
Well, my first advice would be align within your company, ensure that everyone is on the same page, regardless of the size of your company, small, medium, large. You look at the need of the DevOps teams. So set goals together, find out what you want to achieve and how you want to get there. Look at whether you want to build it yourself, like we did, or you want to buy certain pieces of software. And not just buy just one piece of software, align with a vendor strategically, not only ensuring functionality today, but also in the future. And see whether they are willing to work with you on potential solutions that you need. They might have like 5% of what you need, but they might be willing to build it together with you as well. But most important, regardless of your customer, internal, external, doesn't matter for that. Doesn't matter. You can build the nicest castle on a hilltop, but if they want that mansion on the beach with the infinity pool, they won't use your castle. So work together to achieve the best result.
That's fantastic advice, Danny. It's clear that simplifying complexity and staying aligned with your users and customers are key themes that organizations need to keep in mind. Before we wrap, I just want to thank you for sharing your insights with us today. It's been great hearing about how APG has navigated this journey and what's on the horizon. And with that, I'll hand it back to Kellen and Graham, who'll be diving into some valuable industry insights for us.
Thanks, Anna and Danny. It's great to see the journey APG on. I'd like to welcome Kellen back to the stage. So Kellen, what's your takeaway from what you just heard?
DevOps is essential. If you're not automating what you're doing, you will have issues. It's just pretty much the way it is for us. I mean, we are expected to do more with less.
Very much so. So for the last 7 years, Redgate has been running a survey called the State of Database Landscape Report. And we run it every year to understand, to take the temperature of our industry, understand what's changing, what's hot, what's not, and then we can feed that information into sharing with you, sharing the people who answered the survey, but also it helps inform us about the products we're building. It's a survey that we run and we ask over 2,500 data professionals, DBAs, developers, architects, C-level executives about what is interesting them in the database landscape. And the full report is out at the beginning of next year, but now we're going to take you through some early results that relate to how we build and the early results and some insights that we've been getting. So Kellen, Archon and Danny have already illustrated for us the three major issues that customers and our survey respondents and analysts are saying. It's be efficient, be innovative, and be secure. All of us are dealing with these issues. So does that resonate with you?
It does.
So let's look at each one of these in turn. From an improve efficiency perspective, for a DBA, what does improving efficiency mean for you?
It means uptime. I want to make sure that that database is always available. I want to make sure that it never goes down. I may prefer to have a database with even no users in it, but that's probably not going to happen.
So for more on the engineering side of the house, we need to make changes. We're under pressure to make changes, but we need to make those changes consistently, repeatedly, regularly, and quickly. And so possibly not quite aligned on our approaches there. So let's look at innovation. What does innovation look like to a DBA?
May patch a database, may upgrade to the newest release, but I don't want to have to do changes. No, I don't want to do that, no.
Okay, so engineers are wanting to try things out, test, have new ideas, take risks, learn what's valuable to their customers. So again, we're not quite aligned on that yet. So maybe being secure, maybe that's something we could find some common ground on. So for engineers, there's a huge amount to think about. We've got the OWASP vulnerability scores, what's top of mind there. We've got static testing that tells us vulnerabilities. We've got dynamic testing. We're doing performance testing. There's a huge amount of inputs, huge amount of change that is coming into our backlogs that we're having to respond to. So we're really pleased that the DBAs are making the database secure.
And everything that touches the database, so help us God.
So those are the top three challenges we're hearing in our survey. And now we're going to look at a few more of the details.
So 74% of the database teams are using more than one platform. Like I said, you've all joined Team Kellen. I appreciate it. It's all right. But organizations are incorporating all of that with new technology, and now you're starting to look at AI and everything included in that. Over a quarter of the respondents said they were using more than 4 platforms. How about out in the crowd? Anybody out there using more than 4? Am I the only one? You'll get there. You'll get there. I trust. I trust. Many organizations are using a mix of on-prem and in the cloud. We are hybrid. Database professionals are starting their days maybe working in SQL Server. Middle of the day, they get to Oracle. By the end of the day, they're onto open source and Postgres. Along with these demands, they're now bringing in all of that new technology, and it's difficult, it's challenging. Natural life of a database is growth. So with all of that, we are now expected to do this with multi-petabytes of storage. And this can be really heavy on us. A lot is expected of us.
So the second factor we're expected to see, and we're expected to deploy at speed. And combining some of our insights with the State of DevOps report, the DORA survey, has shown that almost 1 in 5 organizations are making daily changes. That's lots of volatility, that's lots of risk, that's lots of change in those environments. And in comparison with last year's survey, we see an increase by 50% of organizations making changes at short notice. Those are fixes, those are requests from customers, or, if anybody remembers Log4j, security fixes that need to be fixed really, really quickly. And what we're seeing is 2 groups starting to emerge. Those organizations who are able to respond to change very quickly in that 18% group, from another group who are making changes weekly or maybe monthly. And that is increasingly an issue for those organizations because speed is a competitive advantage. Being able to respond to competitive pressures, respond to customers, respond to these security vulnerabilities that are emerging continue to be super important. So helping with all this is our mission at Redgate. Redgate makes ingeniously simple software that helps data professionals get the most out of any database, anywhere. And with 3/4 of us now using more than one database platform, and Kellen, I think you have us believe that's actually everybody.
Team Kellen.
It's critical that we deliver on that mission to provide support across multiple database platforms.
So how many of you have seen DB Engine's ranking? Hopefully some of you have. You're going to see some data go across here. These are the top enterprise database platforms, and a couple open source run in there. You'll see MongoDB as well as Postgres. And then we threw Snowflake in because, of course, that's really interesting data. If you have not gone out to the site, definitely think about doing it because the data is fascinating. The algorithms behind this that feed this site is impressive to me. I've used it since back like 2012 in different blogs to understand where database platforms were going, why people use different ones, and explained where my career was going as well.
Yeah, and you may not be aware, but Redgate acquired DB Engines back in May this year. So it's now part of the Redgate family. And we promise to keep providing the same insights into database trends that you've become so dependent on, so trusting of.
I appreciate that. That means I'll keep blogging about it and nobody will get me in trouble.
Thanks, Kellen. So last year, my colleague David Gummer, the Chief Product Officer of Redgate, stood on this stage and said that 2024 was about strengthening the multi-platform offerings that Redgate has. Now, while Redgate has a heritage of SQL Server, we actually started putting multi-platform features into our products way back in 2003 with support for Oracle in source control. So I'm really pleased to say that Flyway now has support for over 50 database variants, including in the community version. So we now support ClickHouse, Cassandra, and Databricks in general availability, with Mongo and Amazon's DocumentDB coming very soon. But that's the breadth. We continue to strengthen the core capabilities. So state-based auto-deployments and migration-based auto-deployments are now both supported. So whichever approach suits you, you have that option. And there's going to be a lot more coming in 2025 as well. We've also been working really hard on Redgate Monitor. We've been improving our capabilities for Postgres, so alerting for replication and high availability health. So when you depend on disaster recoveries, you know that those clusters and those other mirrors are available. We've been doing query tuning recommendations so you can optimize query performance and real-time current activity monitoring so that you are absolutely aware of what's going on in those databases. And today I'm really pleased to be announcing that Redgate Monitor is now available to deploy in Linux environments, underpinned with timescale DB, making the solution a much more natural fit for Postgres first customers, and that will be available early next year. And we'll continue to add more capabilities for Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, and of course, our favorite SQL Server. And Kellen, I think you've been working on the multi-database platform parts of Monitor as well.
We've been working on that for over 6 months now, yes.
Great. So I can't go without mentioning our latest product, Test Data Manager. We launched it here last year, and it's multi-database by design. But we've been working hard on its core features. So subsetting is now twice as fast and means you can quickly trim down databases to just 10% of their size.
That'll make a big difference for those multi-petabyte databases that I'm dealing with. Your production systems will still be petabytes, but your dev, test, QA will be much smaller, and you'll be able to manage them easier.
And with the auto-anonymization and deterministic masking, that means those test databases won't have PII in them, that personal identifiable information. And it's lightning fast to provision those test instances so that developers are not waiting for new test environments and they can get on and do their testing, which means you can standardize your workflows and not slow down in your deployment and your testing. And we've got a really exciting announcement coming up a bit later.
So this slide here, you're seeing some data that we've removed the messy middle. What I've got here is databases that we saw mostly in the cloud or all in the cloud for their environment landscape. But we removed, again, all the ones that maybe hadn't moved or were about to move or moved halfway. And the reason is that there was some interesting results that came from this, where they consistently kept going up year after year. Between 2023, oh boy, we went back old school, 2023 to 2024, there was a decrease. These numbers went down, and we wanted to understand why.
And what do you think is driving that shift?
This right here, we saw then that there was an increase in all on-premises. Now, this might seem backwards, but for me, it actually didn't. Even when I did this in multi-cloud environments, I was feeling the pressure of these. I had the VLDBs, the very large databases. These were these core systems that were monstrous, that often were the last to move as people who were most in the cloud or considered them all in the cloud and refactoring or moving were trying to get there. And the challenges was, as the customers came back, in those respondents said, 66% said scalability and flexibility. Well, for the cloud to be infinitely scalable, each individual resource has a limit put on it. That way you can measure it and you know what you're coming up against. For those very large databases that fit outside the norm, they had a real difficult time going to the cloud. Many times would revert back as they were mostly part way in their migration process, end up back on-prem, and the data gravity resolving around those big databases pulled everything back. The next piece was actual high availability and reliability. You may not do lift and shift exactly as the way that it was designed inside your on-premises environment. They must be architected to the cloud to be successful going to the cloud. So if it was done wrong, again, it may move back. The last part was actual cost efficiency. Cost efficiency and this whole myth around you're going to the cloud to save money. Initial investment is much lower. That's why you go to the cloud. But if you don't have strong planning beforehand and making sure you do it smart and do cost assessments as you go along, you can have cost increases that are just out of the ballpark. So it's important to think ahead and plan and do those like checks as you go along to make sure that you don't pay too much for those resources. And that may be a reason that we're seeing this, and we're going to continue to watch it year in and year out.
And while we're on the subject of cloud, I'm really pleased to say that we now have Redgate Flyway Enterprise, Redgate Test Data Manager, and Redgate Monitor Enterprise available in cloud marketplaces for you to procure in a much slicker fashion. And also, you can use your cloud credits against those purchases. So every time you run a survey, you get some surprises, right? We've got some trends, but this year, there was no exception. There was a surprise. And I wanted to just talk through that a little bit. So we've got some challenges here, and I wanted to see your impression about what do you think the single biggest challenge we face was. So for those of you who think data security and access controls is the biggest challenge, can we see a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you. How about skill set requirements and training? Is that the biggest challenge? A few more there, great, thank you. Data integration complexities. Oh, okay, interesting. And then monitoring and troubleshooting. Is that the biggest challenge? Okay, well, we were surprised to hear that it's actually skill set requirements and training is the biggest challenge we face in the community today. 1 in 4 don't receive opportunities for professional development. Did that surprise you?
Not at all. I always found that we were the last ones to get money on the budget anytime we were in IT. We didn't get our training. We were expected to be skilled, but to figure it out on our own. I can't get over how many people that are here this week that I'm aware of either did it on PTO or on their own dollar.
Who's here on PTO? Wow, that's amazing.
You can take this section of the video and point it out to your boss and say, this is where I raised my hand.
Certainly at Redgate, we believe in providing our engineers with time to learn. We have an internal conference for Redgaters by Redgaters where we share about what we've learned. And then Friday afternoons, everybody has time to learn, pick up new technologies, and share it with their peers so that everybody's picking up on and benefiting from that time.
This is definitely the place to connect, share, and learn.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kellen. Great being on stage with you. Welcome to Redgate. Thank you very much. Now, I want to take a moment to show you some of the newest innovations in our product portfolio that are going to really be addressing some of the things that we've seen today. And so you can free up time and headspace for innovation. So thank you, Kellen, for your insights. Now, please welcome to the stage one of our fantastic product managers, Senior Product Manager at Redgate, James Hempson.
Thanks so much, Graham. It's great to be here. I'm really excited to show you some of the stuff that we've been working on over the last year.
So let's revisit those 3 core challenges: security, innovation, and efficiency, starting with the security one. Kellen talked security earlier, highlighting some of the headlines that we've seen, and we talked a little bit about the data in our State of Database Landscape report. And security is a big problem. It's just being made complicated by some macro changes of moving into database, into multi-platform environments. So we were surprised to see this statistic coming out of the report. 21% of organizations are saying security concerns are stopping them adopting multiple platforms. That means that they are not being able to take advantage of innovations in technology, new database types, because they're concerned that that will open them up to security changes. So how can you innovate if you don't have security underpinning everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that what we see is that really to innovate, you've got to make sure you've got space, right? You've got to make sure you've got the time and get those kind of day-to-day tasks out of the way. And one thing that we hear all the time is that data protection, simplifying auditing, and managing those complex regulations that are always coming out is just a massive time sink. And you want to automate that stuff away, right? So you've got that space to innovate. And that brings us to Redgate Monitor Enterprise, which actually launched back in April this year, but it addresses some of these security concerns in a few ways. Now, I'm sure that most of you in this room have been in this position, right? Like there's an audit going on somewhere in your company, and these requests start flying in. People are asking questions like, hey, who's got permission to this server? And hey, have you got encryption configured on that one? And with a huge estate, like you'll probably have, finding that information is super hard and really difficult. But Redgate Monitor's security features that I was just talking about use the information that we just capture as part of our standard database monitoring and surface essential security information, starting with things like who has access to what. So how do we find out who has access to what? Well, in the security tab of Redgate Monitor, you can see all of your monitored servers and search for servers. You can see the number of groups and users. So if we just search for monitor, yeah, that's right, cool, and then just click on that, there we go. You can see all of the people who have access to that. You can export that data, send that out to your auditors. And finally, you can even search for specific users. So let's have a little look and see what Graham's got access to here. Turns out he's a sysadmin of this database. Is that?
Probably shouldn't
right?
be.
Yeah. One of the perks of being a CTO, I guess, right? So let's look at configuration compliance. Again, you can pick a bunch of templates here, things like CIS benchmarks and your company standard, and you can configure all of those things in the back end in that little thing there that says compliance templates. And that gives you this insight to see at a glance which servers are compliant and which ones aren't. And you can even click on a server like I've just done there, click on export, and send that to your IT team to request a change to those servers. And there are 3 things we think this really helps with. First up, it gives you visibility into what users have access to, right? Like, it means no more custom scripts, no more external consultants trying to feed you this information. It moves you all from being reactive to proactive because you've got this data at your fingertips. And finally, I think this is the most important point, it means that you can be confident that you're compliant all the time, not just at audit time.
I love that. Compliant all the time, not just at audit time. We should get that copyright. So innovation needs space and time. So how do you make the space and time if you're going to be dealing with the day-to-day firefighting and the operations are just standing still? So you're looking for ways to accelerate software delivery, automating, and getting you to spend more time on higher value innovation. And it's about making the things you do slicker, easier, more reliable. But also with tools which allow you to focus on the task and amplify the signal in all that noise. So you're only dragged out of bed for the really important things. Tools which learn what is important to you. So we asked about the use of AI in our survey. And these are sorts of things that people are using AI to do. They're automating database and continuous integration and releases. They're deploying reliably and consistently. And they're embracing smart tools. And so for those people who are using AI, 84% said it really delivers improved productivity.
Yeah, totally. And at Redgate, we think that the products that you use day to day should have purposeful AI in them. Kind of like Kellen was saying earlier, actually. AI that helps you be more efficient, more effective in your day-to-day tasks. And we've been thinking about that in Monitor too. I'm sure you're all used to seeing some days, things like this happening where you've just got this wall of notifications. And we asked ourselves a question. What if we could use machine learning to slim that down? And let's take the alert on CPU utilization here as an example. So this is the standard thing to do, right? You set a bit of a threshold. You say, hey, it's about 90%. That's kind of where we want to hit our peak. And if you lower it, you start to see exactly what we just saw in that previous video, that just wall of notifications. But using machine learning, we can learn from yesterday's data, forecast out what's going to happen in the next 24 hours. It's this little gray line on the chart. And that means that you can reduce the threshold. And you'll only get alerts when usage is high, not when it's, you'll only get alerts when the usage is high, not when it's high, sorry, when it's unusually high. I messed up that tagline, didn't I, Graham?
Well,
I love the sound bites.
One tagline's enough.
So we think that there's a bunch of things that this helps with as well, right? It means that you get something tailored to your estate. You only get notified when it matters. And like Graham was saying, you're able to find that signal in the noise of notifications. And also, I mean, it means less time spent in config, which we all want, less time spent configuring our products.
So let's consider the third one, the need to improve efficiency. We're all smart people, right? So how did we get here? We've got 2 groups with one goal. We want to make technology drive the business and be better. The operations folk believe and want to keep things stable, and change is risk. Whereas developers are under huge pressure to make changes, respond to the business, and deliver for customers. But there's a divide between them. It often feels like we're just throwing things over the wall and expecting the other person to pick that up. And our latest research shows that 68% of operations and developers don't collaborate, which is amazing. That means we have only 30% using formal sharing processes and cross-functional collaboration. I mean, dev and ops, DevOps, wasn't that just going to solve the problem, bringing the two words together?
I mean, that was the promise, right? Like that DevOps would bring these teams together to work more efficiently. And at Redgate, we think that managing test data is a key piece of this DevOps puzzle. When everyone in dev and test has access to up-to-date data that looks like prod, release quality goes up. And at the same time, it means the ops team are freed up from those time-consuming things and the repetitive work that you want to get out of the way. And we thought long and hard about this year, and we built something that we think helps solve this, which is AI-powered data generation, which we're releasing in beta today as part of Test Data Manager. So let's work out how this works, right? Let's take a little example here. I've got a database. I need to get it to dev and test. And it's got a table that looks a bit like this. There's a bunch of shipping types in there, everything from like international priority, standard ground, pickup. They've all got different prices. And right now, the UAT team, they're printing out labels that look a little bit like this. It's not clear what's going on here. Prices are all wrong. There's a test. Is that a name? Is that a city? Is that a company? I'm not sure. And they want something that looks a bit more like this, right? Something that has real names, something that has correct costs, and has a city and a company name in it. So, they can actually test whether the application's working or not, because that's pretty important. So back to the data. If we wanted to make this data ourselves, you need to work out the relationships. You then need to work out the different ranges in there, and then somehow create a script that remakes that, and you get the picture. It kind of builds and builds and builds as you add complexity in, right? So how does machine learning solve this for us? Well, let's dive into the demo. I'm going to kick off the data generation process just over here, and then we'll go and take a look at the data. There's that table you just saw with all those shipping methods in there. You can see on the other side, on the right-hand side, we've got an empty database. So let's jump back. And in a couple of clicks, you can see that we're generating data. It's reading from the source database, using machine learning to work out those relationships, and then generating realistic data off the back of that. And hang on, I know what you're all thinking, right? I know this AI stuff. My security team will not go for this because you're going to be sending data out to a third party. But one of the great things about our machine learning capability is that all of your data stays on-prem. We run the models in your environment. And that means your data stays yours. So we can see here that we've created 1,000 rows of data. The data looks pretty like the original, and we tripled the size of the database. And don't take my word for it that the data looks like the original. You can see the statistical equivalence here of the two values in both databases. It looks just like the first one. But, and I know you all know this, a database isn't just one table, right? There's a bunch of tables, and that's why we brought together rules-based data generation, a bunch of data sets, and AI-based data generation in this one capability, so that you can use rules for those predefined patterns, things like names, social security numbers, zip codes, and you can use machine learning-based data generation or AI-based data generation for those tricky corner cases and complex edge cases that we were just talking about. And we think this is super cool for a few reasons, right? When you look at this data downstream, your developers, your testers, your QA, it looks right to them. You're able to use the right tool for the right job, like I was just saying. You can use machine learning for tricky corner cases, and then rules-based for the more day-to-day data. And of course, it's totally privacy preserving. Your data stays yours. And like I just said, we're launching this today in beta. If you want to join our beta, we've got a little QR code up here that you can take a scan of. And if you want to learn more about this, which I'm sure you will do because it's fascinating, you can come down to a session that I'm going to be running with Kellen Gorman in just a second, and Ryan Springett, one of our super awesome solutions engineers, in room 340 to 342.
Great.
Thank you so much, Graham.
Thanks, James. James Hemerson. So when you get back to the office next week, your boss will ask you three things. You were in Seattle, so did you get rained on? Did you go up the Space Needle? And how was the coffee? But what you really want to be talking about is what you're going to do next. So if you're just starting out in database DevOps and you need to understand what's happening in your estate with your databases, start with Monitor. If you're looking to implement change management, you need to talk to your team about automating and maybe consider Flyway. And if you're about speed of change and testing changes you've made, then it's Test Data Manager and protecting your estate. So there's something for everyone, no matter where your starting point is. And wherever you get to in the next 12 months, please come back next November and you can tell us all about it and where you've got to on your database DevOps journey. So I'd like to welcome back to the stage Anna and Annabelle to help me close up this year's Redgate Keynote. And then
Thanks, Graham. Now, if you want to know more about some of the ideas we shared here today, we recommend you check out the following sessions. So at 9:45 this morning, you can find out more about applying AI-enhanced data generation to help you create test data with integrity. At 2 p.m., we have a session on simplifying and streamlining database deployments. And at 3:45, you can learn more about building resilient environments by incorporating security and compliance into database monitoring.
And yesterday, we reminded you that we're going to be back here running Past Data Community Summit in Seattle next November. And I'm super excited to be the first to announce that we'll be also taking Past Summit on tour next year, running smaller events in Dallas, New York, and Amsterdam. So check out Past Summit on social for more details. So this year marks Redgate's 25th birthday, and we've covered a lot of ground since our founding in 1999. We've always been committed to supporting and educating the database community through events like this one. And before we end today, we want to invite you to help celebrate with us with a special gift. So over at the Redgate booth in the exhibit hall, you'll see our fabulous claw machine game full of lots of different prizes. So not only do you have the chance to win this cute little fluffy aardvark, which you'll be thinking, what is this? It's actually the first of Redgate's products was called aardvark, so that's why we've got the little fluffy guy. So not only do you get to win him, but you also get the chance to win a golden aardvark and a $250 cash prize. So head over to the booth and yeah, be lucky.
So thank you again for joining us here this morning. We hope you enjoy the sessions and your agenda for the rest of the day. Have a great time during the rest of Past Summit, and thank you very much.